Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. On this episode, I'm really excited to welcome my guest, Cara Everett. Now, Cara is a freelance health writer, medical reviewer, registered dietitian, and someone who I admire in the content creation space. So, Cara, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me, Ryan. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so just some quick background before we get into kind of who you are and what you do. Kara and I actually used to work together at a previous venture that we were at last year. So, Kara, for those who haven't heard of who you are, just do a quick background on kind of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, definitely. So, as you said, I'm a registered dietitian, so I have a background in nutrition. I'm also a content writer and editor in the health space. So, I've written about hearing aids, nutrition, a variety of different health topics. And as a dietitian, I also provide, patient counseling. So, do a couple different types of things in the health space.
Nice. Yeah. So, what separates Kara Everett, I guess, from the hundreds or thousands of other content writers, or now we have AI tools or agencies out there? What separates you from everyone else?
Well, maybe not much, but I think that one thing that I really like to focus on in my writing is attention to detail. Any topic that I'm going to write about, I thoroughly research that topic. Of course, you always want to use authoritative sources, and then I also like to track down the top professionals in the field. And I'm kind of known for going for like the very, very top of the top and seeing if they'll talk to me, and if they do, then love to interview them and just develop a relationship with them so that I can draw on their expertise and get that into my articles. So
Yeah.
that's something that I don't see a whole lot in, a variety of different websites.
Yeah, you definitely go above and beyond in your work. So, talk about some of the biggest wins that you have. I know from my perspective, when we used to work together, Best Hearing Aids on NCOA.org was probably one of your big wins. And you mentioned how you go above and beyond. I remember when you contacted like a US senator or a US representative to get their take on like a hearing aids bill. That's a prime example of that. So, in your opinion, Kara, what are some of your biggest wins?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think that would depend on whether you're talking about personal wins or SEO wins. I would say in
That's a
terms of
good
SEO,
distinction.
yeah, kind of a distinction there. Definitely, like you said, best hearing aids for NCOA. It's still ranking number one above like FDA and government sites. So that's a huge SEO win. I can't actually believe that it's still number one. So it's doing great for them, which is great because it's helping a lot of older adults find, a reputable source for information for hearing aids. That's a big one. Another one that we did that has performed well is best over the counter hearing aids. So that's kind of a subset in the hearing aid industry. Then we wrote a hearing aid buyer's guide, which is a monster of a piece that has ranked well. Also, and then I've gotten into some weight loss programs specifically for older adults through the company we used to work for as well. And those pieces have not done quite as well in terms of SEO, but personally, I think they've been great because they just again have helped older adults who are sometimes at a disadvantage when they're looking for reputable sources, because unfortunately so many disreputable companies target older adults with information that is not helpful for them. So that meant a lot to me to put that information out there on NCOA and other sites that are geared towards older adults so they could find information they needed.
Yeah, so that's good leeway into my next question actually. So talk about, I guess, how do you balance the ethics in affiliate marketing, right? So there are certain companies, certain products giving us higher commissions, pushing us to like promote certain things. How do you navigate that when, hey, the company says, Kara, this has to be ranked number one, but you test it and say, well, actually, this is ranked number three or five. How do you balance being truthful to readers versus the affiliate side?
Yeah, that is a really, really great question. And I think for some writers out there, depending on the company that they're working for, that can be tricky. I feel very strongly that honesty has to come first. You have to have integrity as a writer, both for your reputation, but also for your readership. And I was very thankful that, when we worked for Three Ships, they had a lot of integrity themselves. So my editor was always, very upfront with, you're doing the testing, you put the scores in there and you rank it how you want to. Now, like you say, there's always the affiliate marketing side of it as well. There are some considerations, for partners that pay more or that have a, whatever better rank or better relationship with the company. But again, I feel that we have to give our readers what our personal results were, and the information that we feel like is going to help them the best, and then let the chips fall where they may. Because honesty and reporting is the only way that we can serve our readers well, by giving them information they can trust. And I think that it also contributes to a healthy marketplace by pointing out weaknesses and strengths of products, so that the strongest companies sell more and the weaker ones have to work to improve their products and services.
Yeah, we always call them the F word, Forbes. Forbes is notorious for just going after all the keywords and putting the high commissions up top without testing anything. So let's talk about the importance of actually being a subject matter expert or SME in testing products on the various topics that you write about. What sets you apart, Kara, as kind of a subject matter expert on hearing aids or any other topic that you've written about versus the competition out there?
hmm so yeah, I mean, being a subject matter expert in your topic is super important. It's a little bit odd that I'm a dietitian and have written these top ranking hearing aid articles, kind of strange, but I worked for Three Ships writing about hearing aids for almost 2 years. Didn't know anything about hearing aids or hearing health when I started, but within probably 12 months, I became really knowledgeable in that area. And the biggest, well, I guess there were two key things that led to me becoming the subject matter expert in that area for our company. One was research, research, research. So every single day I was, combing the internet for the top articles on hearing aids from an information standpoint. I was combing the academic and government sites on hearing aids and hearing health, reading through those, just learning everything I could about them. And then the other thing was, again, contacting those experts. So when I started to read more and more and see certain experts quoted over and over, I was like, those are the people that I want to contact. So I started contacting hearing experts at Johns Hopkins, at USC, different universities. I just emailed. If I could find email addresses, I would email. If I could find phone numbers, I would call. And I just started at the very top. And you'd be surprised how often those top people will get back to you and be happy to talk to you, especially in the education space, because that's what they're there for, right? That's their passion, is to teach and educate. So I just took advantage of that. I was like, they're the people that know the most. I'm going to learn from them. So I think that you just have to put the time in, and find a topic and a subject that you are really interested in and are willing to put all that time in to learn more than the other writers in your field, so that you can give the most information.
Yeah, I remember you actually went through a hearing test too, and you had like the results from your test and you put that in the content. Like that definitely helps a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I know that, we're going to get into AI a little bit, but that is personal experience is something AI cannot replace. So, yes, absolutely. That's, that hands-on experience. Yeah, go get a hearing test. If you're writing on cars, go to the dealership, test drive the cars you're writing about. I mean, do anything you can do to get your hands on what you're writing about, and that's going to set you apart for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk about the balance between like writing best practices versus balancing that with SEO best practices, because your background's more in traditional content writing versus mine is more traditional SEO versus content writing. How do you balance that, Kara?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So you're right. My background is in content, not SEO. You have taught me a lot about SEO, however, and SEO is important. I know that there are some, people who say, well, there's this tension, right, between SEO and content writers. And there is sometimes, and I've definitely run into that. Um, but SEO is so important. You can write the best content in the world, but if it's not optimized for SEO, nobody's going to find it, right? You could probably tell me, I think I've seen a stat that 80% of viewers on the internet look at the top three results. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, they click the top three or four results. They don't even scroll past, especially on their phone. They don't even scroll past.
Yeah, exactly. So SEO is important, right? I mean, you have to optimize what you've written for SEO. However, what this is just the approach that I take, is that when I get a brief, which typically comes from our SEO department, it will have the primary keywords, secondary keywords, some long tail keywords, some things that they want me to include. I look through that and I refer to that as I'm writing. But I don't, I mean, there are guidelines, include these keywords a certain number of times in the content. I don't really do that as I'm writing because I definitely want it to look and sound natural. I'm not going to make sure I include something 20 times. I just write it. And then I go back and I check the keywords again. And that's when I will optimize it on my end. So I'll get some more of the keywords in there if need be, to help with that. And then from there, I hand it off to SEO. They look through it again. And then, if I have run across keyword stuffing more than I would would have liked to, if it comes back and I'm seeing a phrase in there every other sentence, I'm going to push back on that because if it doesn't sound natural, first of all, I think Google is going to ding the piece for that reason. But I'm always thinking of the reader. I'm always, I read my content out loud as well. I've heard that that's a good thing to do, to just get it in your ear and see how it sounds. And if it sounds unnatural, then I will push back and I'll say, I don't think that this is, where we want it to be yet. So.
Yeah, but that's what separates you too as such a great writer is that you're also willing to test all these things and do it your own way versus just the traditional SEO way and what these people above you are telling you what to do with keywords and whatnot. So that's what I've always respected about you and your work. So let's transition to AI now, Kara. I know we talked about this a little bit before, but as AI content generation just continues to expand, I guess what would you tell someone who is a content writer right now, an aspiring content writer, to kind of separate yourself to mitigate S or AI taking over their jobs or just the fears that come with that?
Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely a real thing for sure. But I really think that the writers who continue to work at being subject matter experts and digging into their subjects, doing hands on reviews, and that can be with a product or a service. So, if you're reviewing, hearing aids, for instance, cell phones, any type of product, do the hands on reviews, take your own pictures. We did a ton of that where, the company we used to work
And it
at, we would
worked.
take those pictures. You can be with your phone, doesn't have to be fancy. Get firsthand images in there that you can put in, and then form relationships with experts for sure, again, which I know I keep going back to that. It's a big thing though. It's time consuming, but AI can't do that. AI is not going to get a quote in there from an expert like you can. I don't think that those writers are going to become obsolete. Because AI is smart, but the whole point of AI is to give you information without having to put in effort, right? So if you're a human writer putting in effort, you're providing that piece that AI cannot provide. And that's going to be the key to not becoming obsolete or going out of a job.
One thing I always tell people when I do some like AI consulting work too is I always say that AI can't actually create. AI can repurpose because if you think about where AI is getting its outputs from, it's all the training data that's already vastly available on the internet. So it's repurposing someone else's work. So I think as a good content writer, you have to think about that mindset, create versus just repurpose what's already out there because most writers just repurpose what's already out there.
That's a really, really good point. Absolutely. Yeah, if you're creating something original, something unique, and something based on your experience is automatically going to be unique, then yeah, absolutely. Then you're already in a different lane than AI. So that's good.
Yeah, so I'm curious, Kara, are you using AI at all right now? Are there any tools you've explored, ChatGPT, Claude? Just talk about if you're using it at all.
Not at all.
Really?
I'm not. And I know pretty much everybody is. I mean, I'm a little bit anti AI. But it's partly because I just love to write. And it's like you say, creating versus repurposing. It's hard for me anyway. If I read something AI has written, if I look something up, this is AI's answer, it's kind of hard for me to get that out of my head. And I don't want that to be there. I just want to have a blank slate and just come up with my own, content. So that's how I go
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, let's talk about that now. So, with all these AI powered search engines, right? We have Google Search Generative Experience. It's called AI Overviews now. We have Search GPT, which is OpenAI's new search engine that's being rolled out. Talk about, I guess, the dangers of that coming from your perspective as a writer in the health space or the healthcare space. Talk about the dangers of just AI answers in the healthcare space or just AI generated answers in general.
Yeah, that is definitely a real thing. So you Google anything, and pretty much you get the AI overview right at the very top. So because those answers are answers that are compiled from the top ranking answers on Google, it's really impossible to know where they're coming from and if they're coming from authoritative sources or not. and if those sources are accurate or not. So my concern, particularly in the healthcare space, is that people will just read the AI summary because it's at the very top and will not scroll down to the actual sites to find their answers. So I'm not saying it's all bad. It's a quick way to find answers, but especially if it's a health related answer, I would go down and find the Mayo Clinic or, some other authoritative site that you can trust.
Yeah, especially a more complex query too, right? Like something simple about, what pill should I take for this injury, but like you start getting into the complexities of cancer and like some of these other health related things, that's where it becomes a very slippery slope.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have to wonder in the future if Google isn't going to implement some regulations around that, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So where do you see this all going, Kara? Like with AI in general, where do you see it going in like the content creation space? I guess give me your overall thoughts on AI right now. I know you said you're anti AI. I just want to hear a more general perspective on what you have going on.
Yeah, definitely. And to say I'm anti-AI, that's a large blanket statement. I mean, I'm definitely not against the concept of artificial intelligence. It's done a lot of great things. Hearing aids have artificial intelligence in them, which is very cool. They can learn sounds in your environment over time, making for a better listening experience, which actually helps brain health. So, I mean, there's so many great things about it. But I do think, in the space of content creation, I just don't love it, for all the reasons we've kind of already talked about. But I do think it's here to stay. I don't think that it's going to go away. I think that it's like any new thing in technology, though. I think that AI has come along, really fast. Everybody's adopted it just super fast. Like we're so excited about it. Let's put AI onto everything. Personally, I think the pendulum's going to swing back. I think there's going to be, we're in a learning curve right now. It's the kind of the period of excitement about it. I think that we're going to get smarter and smarter with how to use the tool, where it's appropriate, where it's not. And yeah, I think that, like I say, I don't think it's going anywhere, but I think as we continue to use it and learn and develop it, I think that it will, come to be a more and more useful tool.
Yeah, I agree with you. Very well said. So let's talk about marketing quacks now, Kara. This is the Marketing Quacks podcast after all. So let's stick to content writing in your area of content writing. What are some just tricks and gimmicks that you see people do that you just kind of makes your blood boil or like, I hate that gimmick. What would that be?
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of a cliche, I guess, but one of them that I absolutely hate, it's a huge pet peeve of mine, is clickbait. So when you see a title that grabs your attention, right, and you click on it and you're like, this article is not even about what that said, what it said it was about. That annoys me. Sometimes they do it in like an opposite thing. So it's like five best such and such, and then you click on the article and it's like actually the five that you never want to try or whatever, and that annoys me. So the title should definitely accurately reflect what the content is. Another thing that I see in the health space of content creation in particular is authors that give vague credentials that they can't get in trouble for using, but they're really not accurate. So I see that sometimes in the field of nutrition in particular. People will say they're a nutrition expert or they're a clinical nutritionist, and
They're
then when
not
you
licensed. Yeah.
right, exactly, and you do a little digging and look, they've got no clinical experience, they don't see patients. Well, that's not honest. It's really not ethical to do, but especially in nutrition, the rules around that are a little bit vague. Anyone can say they're a nutritionist if they're, whether they are or not. So
Yeah.
using vague credentials is another. I see that as a marketing quack because they're trying to give credibility where maybe they don't actually have it. So
Yeah, and you just explained marketing. I mean, that's marketing in general is clickbait. You see it all over YouTube. I would say the majority of content on Google that you find is clickbait. I mean, everything is clickbait for sure. So I agree with you. So now I want to talk about, you mentioned you're doing a career transition before we got on the show here. If you want to just elaborate on kind of what that looks like at a high level and what inspired you to do that, I'm just curious to hear about that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I am actually transitioning to mission work. So I'm going to be working with a Christian ministry in the inner city where I live, and it's ministry that is focused on helping teens who have been through traumatic experiences and helping with trauma healing for them. And it's different obviously than what I have been doing, but it's somewhat similar because the reason I got into healthcare in the first place is to help people. And so I'm going to be able to continue doing that. I was doing that, previously through content creation. And I loved it when we would get questions from readers. They would email us with questions, loved, contacting our readers through those questions. And in this career change, I'll get to continue helping others just in a more hands-on way. So I'm really excited about it.
What inspired that? What inspired the transition from content writing to this new path that you're taking?
Yeah, definitely. Well, always had an interest in missions, and I also enjoy hands-on work with folks. So, as a dietitian, I do counseling with patients one-on-one, and I really enjoy that connection with people. Forming their relationships with them, finding out what their needs are, and helping them to meet those wherever I can. So that's kind of been my interest in missions work, and I've just felt like God has been calling me to devote my time to that full time. So when this opportunity came up, I decided that it was the time to make that shift. So that's where I'm headed.
I feel like content creation too is one of the easiest places to burn out. At least that's what I've experienced too, anyways.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You're absolutely right. It really can be. And that I find it varies from company to company for sure. I think if you're a freelancer, I've heard of freelancers burning out for sure. And then some companies, and one of the ones I worked with would have really quick turnaround times. And yes, you can absolutely burn out. And it's tricky because content creation, it's such a creative thing, and that's the joy that I find in it. It's very creative, right? It's probably another reason I don't like AI actually, because I like to just create, right? So start with a blank sheet of paper and you're just putting your thoughts and your experiences down. But when you have tight turnaround times, that can kind of put the stopper on the creativity because you just got to get to your word count, you got to get it turned in. So you're right, you definitely can experience burnout for sure.
Which is unfortunate. I should have mentioned this question earlier in the show too, but like I feel like a lot of people that are on top or strategy, they're not in the weeds of content or SEO. There's this mentality where it's quantity, quantity, quality. And that overtakes quality where you could spend the same time on one thing, make it extremely high quality. It's like back to the 80-20 rule, but that could outpace quantity, quantity, quantity. So I'm curious quickly to hear what you have to think about the quantity versus quality argument when it comes to content creation.
Oh, for sure. You are absolutely right. And you're right. I mean, I quantity is a big thing. I think you're right. Quantity usually does win out over quality when you're talking to the strategists. And I understand where they're coming from, right? They want us to have more pieces on a given topic to increase our authority in that space. But man, if you Google pretty much any topic on the internet and look at some of the top ranking pieces even and start reading them and look at the quality of the writing, some of it honestly is pretty sad. It's like, how fast was this written? So as a content writer, I prefer quality, even if it takes another day of writing to get the quality up there. That to me is going to outshine the loads of content out there that are just not as high quality. So, and I think that's better for
Well,
the reader. So.
I agree. And now there's AI tools where you could just bulk generate blog posts in seconds and just get the quality out or the quantity out there, just dismiss all the qualities. I mean, you can do this in literally minutes now. But enough about ramble on here, Cara. Thank you so much for joining the show. Just any final notes that you have for anyone listening on content creation or anything that we talked about?
Yeah, I would just say, back to just, try to keep the fun in what you're doing. If you find that you're not enjoying your writing and it's becoming drudgery, think about switching subject areas. Maybe you want to try out a new field, learn something new. I really think that being excited about what you're writing about is super important to keep that creative spark there. And that's going to just increase your quality of your content and going to help it rank better. And then again, try to just keeping seeking out the professionals in your field and getting that firsthand experience in there as well.
Yep, great advice. Thanks, Cara. Well, thank you so much again for joining this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. One last thing before I forget, where can people follow you online for more information?
Absolutely. The best place to find me online is on LinkedIn, Cara Everett, MSRDN. Those are my credentials. You can look me up and feel free to contact me.
Awesome. Well, thanks again to everyone for listening to this episode. And Cara, thank you so much again for joining the show. Be sure to tune in again next time.